Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. I'm TEENA JHA. As India battles a massive second wave of the coronavirus outbreak, many countries have offered their support, expressed solidarity in this fight against the pandemic. Countries like Russia, Singapore, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the US, Japan, the UAE, several other countries have also offered medical supplies, liquid oxygen, medical equipment, and other medical aid as India grapples with a record-breaking surge in the cases of COVID-19. The European Union has also activated its civil protection mechanism to offer urgent oxygen and medical supplies to India. So what does this help mean for India at this crucial time? Will this solidarity from friends and partner countries help India tide over this massive crisis is what we will discuss on this edition of The Big Picture. Joining me are two distinguished panelists. Let me introduce them to you. I'm joined on the program today by former Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar and Professor Swaran Singh, Chairperson, Center for International Politics, Organization and Disarmament, JNU. Thank you to both my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, let me begin the program today with you. So how do you look at this outpouring of support for India in this critical juncture as we grapple with this massive surge in COVID cases from all our partner countries and also neighbors who have all been extending their help to us in this very, very crucial time?
Yes, thank you very much, TEENA, for having me on the program. And as you said very correctly, at this trying time, I think this is the worst crisis that India is facing since its independence. I don't think we have battled many crises before this, but I don't think there has been any crisis of such proportions, whether it is to deal with our health issues, economy, social sector, etc. So I think at this juncture, and the second wave has come all of a sudden. It has been extremely ferocious, totally unexpected, totally unpredictable. So when it has come, and you mentioned names of a large number of countries, that they have come forward willingly, voluntarily, with great generosity, they have expressed their support. So I think in our battle against COVID-19, first of all, it is extremely reassuring to get these messages of support from across the world. As you mentioned, both in the neighborhood as also from further away, whether it is France, it is Britain, it is Israel, Singapore, Australia, and even China, with whom we've had hostile relations, even on our western border, Pakistan. So they have also come. Russia, of course, was one of the first ones to offer remdesivir injections, which are in somewhat short supply here. Also oxygen, additional oxygen to meet the shortage of oxygen here. So I think at one level, it is extremely reassuring and gratifying that all these countries, most of them who are good friends and strategic partners, that they are coming forward. Secondly, at a more substantive level, I think it is extremely useful because we have seen that whether it is in the area of medicines, it is in the area of oxygen particularly, it is also in the area of certain raw materials and inputs as far as manufacture of vaccines is concerned, whether it is the AstraZeneca vaccine or it is the Novavax, which is being manufactured here under the brand name of Covovax, and it will be, once the approvals are granted, then that will start using it. But the inputs that are coming from outside, so I think it will, in a very significant manner, TEENA, it will strengthen our fight against this second wave. I think, as is known to everyone, the second wave has basically been much more infectious because it has been caused by mutations. The second
different variants,
double mutants, the third mutants, and those are the different strains that have led to it. But I think with these aid and support coming in from across the world, I think it will definitely help us in dealing with this, and sooner rather than later, because there is hope, there is confidence, there is a strength in dealing with this. We have, after all, dealt with the first wave very effectively. So there is a great confidence that we will be able to deal with this also very, very
Absolutely.
soon.
We are all hopeful that we will be able to tide over this crisis as well, the second wave that we are witnessing currently. And as the ambassador pointed out, it's very, very reassuring to have this solidarity and support coming in from different countries, friends, neighbors, partner countries from all across the world. Professor, your views on how do you look at this outpouring of support? Because in the first wave of the pandemic, it was India that was there for every country. We provided medicines to several countries. Then as part of the vaccine Maitri initiative over the past few months, we have been supplying vaccines to countries all across the world. Do you see this as a reciprocation of the goodwill that we have shown to the world in the past 1 year?
Thank you, Teena. I think let me put it in a wider perspective of, despite the initial logistic the hiccups, the outpouring of a global intent to come and stand with India in that sense is located in India's civilizational DNA of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, where right from the liberation movement of India to last 70 years, India, despite its limitation, have seen successive generations of India's leaders showing deep interest in engaging in international affairs and engaging in personal rapprochement, personal chemistry with various global leaders. So this is very unusual about India in that sense, in engaging the whole global community. And that is why you see this is a response that we are noticing. But something more interesting has happened last year, partly because pandemic is an unusual challenge to this largest population on the planet called India. Last year, after 15 years of following a policy that India will not accept any foreign aid in any natural calamities or other disasters, February last year, when we created the Prime Minister's Fund, PM CARES, the policy saw a reinterpretation that in difficult situations, just like other great powers, whether United States or China, in situations like this, India should be open to really accepting foreign aid and assistance, except that this should happen on India's terms, and India should decide how and from where that aid would come. And second, very significant strength of India, repeatedly showcased, is how India has airlifted large numbers of Indian citizens and even foreign citizens, sometimes from Middle East, from various war zones. So right now you see Indian Air Force is very capable of airlifting support from wherever it wants to come and whichever country wants to support us, including, for example, oxygen generating plants which are coming from Germany, oxygen tanks are coming from Singapore and many are UAE, you name it. One after another country is making an offer, but logistically, India is also showcasing the capacity to really accept that aid and assistance. And last point is that this is a global challenge. And as you just mentioned, Teena, India went around the world. 70 countries plus were receiving aid and assistance of all kinds from India. And since the stress has right now shifted to India, and this is a humanities challenge, and it could move to another country tomorrow. You remember what was happening in UK till about 3 months back and how UK has stabilized now. So since India went out and beautifully Joe Biden has already tweeted it that since India was supporting us last year, we will today stand up and support India. It's a challenge for humanity. I think nations have to understand that any other country could become victim tomorrow. But good part is India has cultivated that enormous friendship around the world. India has the logistics to make use of outpouring of intent, which is coming out right now. And therefore, I think the enormous hope that this pandemic would be brought under control. We might see this spike continuing. Various estimates are talking of mid-May being the peak. But I am very sure that whole world is showcasing the support that comes to India. And that is not only limited to pandemic. I think it's a reflection of global endorsement of India's new credentials. And to some extent, last 5-6 years of hyperactive foreign policy that we have seen has perhaps also accelerated that engagement that India has with the global community. And so it's an endorsement, of course, to stand with us to deal with pandemic, but also it's an endorsement of India as a country which is having a global engagement of all kinds.
Okay, so very valid points made there by Professor that we have been following the principle of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Under this principle, we have also been maintaining how this pandemic is a common fight and will require joint efforts from the entire world. So everyone will have to stand with each other when the time comes. Right now it's India, and that's where countries have extended their solidarity as well. But Ambassador, perhaps this is the kind of diplomacy also come under delay in response by the United States has sort of upset a lot of Indians. So how do you look at that, if at all, impacting in the broader context? If I try and understand from you, do you see it in any way impacting the India-US relations? Because the delay in US response has something that has not gone unnoticed.
Yeah, so you have asked a number of very important questions. Number one, the delay has not gone unnoticed. It has not gone unnoticed in India. It has not gone unnoticed in the United States. So you would see that even in the United States, the Indian diaspora there, and even the people there, they have been writing very strongly against this. Now, if your question is, will it have a long-term impact? I do not think that it is going to have a long-term impact. I think it is the Biden administration needs to get a little more sensitive and a little more proactive as far as the concerns of its other countries and major partners are concerned. I think what really rankled Indians in the United States and also back home here is possibly one of the statements by the official spokesperson of the State Department, where he said that it is in the interest of the world to see that American lives are protected and they are vaccinated, thereby saying that some other lives are not as important as the American lives. But I think this is at an official bureaucratic level. Now we have seen right from the top, from President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Jake Sullivan, the NSA, he spoke to his counterpart Ajit Doval here, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, the Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin. So I think each one of them has come out. Basically, they have sensed this some amount of frustration and anger at the fact that this upsurge started happening about a week ago. And here we have the United States, we term it as a global strategic partner. We have just had the Quad Summit meeting. For the first time, it has been upgraded into a summit relationship. And there it was mentioned that India would be assisted, would be supported in terms of manufacturing of vaccines. And this is the sort of thing this is happening, which came as a bit of a surprise because earlier, of course, in the earlier US administration, we'd seen that it was America first. This is the policy. This was the given policy of President Trump. But then it was mentioned when President Biden came onto the scene, and he said that America is back, American diplomacy is back, American leadership is back, and that America is going to work with its allies and its partners. And I don't think there can be a stronger partner for the United States than India in a variety of ways. If we see the aggressiveness and assertiveness of China in the Indo-Pacific area, not only on our territorial borders, on our land borders, but even in the Indo-Pacific, South China Sea, you see how it is, China is becoming so aggressive. So if there is a balance, if there is a counter to China to be offered, nothing can be done without India. So whether it is in strategic terms or it is in economic terms, India is a huge market. Look at the defense partnership between India and the United States that has developed and evolved over the last 10 odd years. So I think the United States also needs India. I think this was a blip. I don't think it will really impact the progress, the upward trajectory of the bilateral partnership, because I think there are so many commonalities, not only in terms of values, but also in terms of convergence of interest. And I think multilateralism is an area where both the countries really need to work together. When we are talking about a rule-based international order, I think that is what both India and the United States follow. And that is what both of them will need to come together and work. And if I may just add one last comment here, Teena, with your permission, and that is, to what your initial comment was, that, when the pandemic started, in the early times of the pandemic, you referred to the supply of hydroxychloroquine by India to the United States. India had at that time put an export ban on HCQ.
Yes.
We revoked the export ban. We ramped up our production and we made all the supplies to the United States. And at that time, the President of the United States had said that the United States is immensely grateful and this act of friendship of India will not be forgotten. And I'm glad that this has been remembered, although a little late, but it has been remembered.
Ambassador, that is the main point of criticism that has also, impacted our vaccine diplomacy. There have been questions raised on India's vaccine diplomacy, because what people are now asking is the proactive response that India gave by revoking the ban on HCQ and sending them to the United States when they needed it the most. The same proactive response was not shown by the United States when India needs crucial medical supplies from them. So, Professor, I would like one comment from you on the vaccine diplomacy of India that has come under criticism, that while a country like America insists on Americans first and vaccinating every American first, why is India not following that policy and perhaps the second wave that has devastated so many lives now?
I think there is a whole debate about vaccine nationalism, which has been, sort of surging in last 1 year plus. So there is no doubt we still live in nation-state system, and the states are primarily responsible for safety, security, and healthcare for their own citizens. You can notice that similar criticism also happens if India continues to export despite surge at home. Or the other instance could be how some of the constituencies are responding to whether we should accept help from China and Pakistan, which are also helping to come and stand next to India. So I would not really give much weightage to such constituencies criticizing. One should look at how states are behaving and how states are interacting with each other. So obviously, United States will have to look at their own citizens first. They already have 3 vaccines, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer, which is being used. And by March end itself, Joe Biden had ordered enough vaccines for entire population of United States, adult population of United States. We do understand that about 20 million these AstraZeneca vaccines are in stockpile in United States, which can be gifted or exported or given to any country in need. But every country makes a very cautious and very careful calculation because each country has to take in account that there could be surge at home as well. There could be a mutant which could come about, and the responsibility for their own citizens is always first. Yes. But we understand that having calculated their own domestic requirements, just as India does, United States and many other countries are opening up now. And I think we should not really give too much weightage to very quick reactions in social media that come about when, sort of Angela Merkel says something or Joe Biden doesn't say something. We have to look at carefully how states are interacting and engaging each other. And in that sense, I think India's close allies, whether it is Saudi Arabia or United States or UAE, Singapore, you name so many of them, are really gearing up to come and stand next to India. And last point I must make also is that it is great feeling of satisfaction that such large number of important nations are willing to stand next to India. Nevertheless, India is world's possibly largest population that we are home to. And this outpouring of help, I think, is more a gesture. Otherwise, India will have to stand up on its own and deal with its own domestic healthcare challenge. India produces largest number of healthcare workforce, largest vaccine quantity. So it is ultimately going to be India's own challenge, except that we will be really emboldened and encouraged by such an international support. And as I keep saying, the endorsement for me is much beyond in addressing the pandemic. It's an endorsement of India.
Absolutely. Ambassador, another important question that comes is, although this outpouring of support, of course, is a nice gesture, it is going to help us, it's reassuring for us in this very, very testing times that we are going through. But are these assurances in sync with our need? Are these essential supplies coming in from the different countries that they have announced? Are they in sync with what we need at the moment?
Thank you, Teena. Thank you for this question. I think the information that is coming out as of now does suggest that all these, what the countries are promising is what India needs. For instance, all these big 4 oxygen converters that have come from Singapore, or what is coming from the UAE, or what is coming in from Germany, or now what the United States has promised. It has said, all the 37 raw materials or inputs, whether it is filters or vials or syringes that are required for manufacturing the AstraZeneca, Covishield or the Novavax, all of them will be cleared and all of them will be sent to India, notwithstanding the fact that President Biden had put some sort of a, well, not exactly a ban, but an export restriction on them on 5th of February under the Defense Production Act. So from the information that is available to us right now, it does appear that it will be all those items. It is, as I mentioned right at the beginning, Russia has promised to send us remdesivir and some of the other medicines and others which have gone in short supply in India. And I don't think India is going to accept those items which we don't really need. People have said things like ventilators and PPEs and masks. We ourselves have been producing enough quantities. We ourselves have even got into the export market now, Teena. So I don't think those are the sort of items that we are going to be accepting, because we will accept what we really need. And this is what we have done, even earlier when I was mentioning in the earlier stages of the pandemic, India supplied to more than 150 countries. All the medications like HCQ, like paracetamol, like PPEs, medical equipments, etc. Those items which were required, which were needed by those countries. And similarly here also, after the vaccine came out, we started our vaccination program on the 16th of January. On the 20th of January, our supplies had gone both to Bhutan and to Maldives. Only sort of those countries which wanted it, which needed it, we have supplied to more than 95 countries, about 60 million jabs of these vaccines, Covishield basically. And this has gone to countries where they are required. That is what the criticism was in the United States also by the American people. Number one, that the United States is sitting on 45 million AstraZeneca doses of vaccine. And it is never going to approve AstraZeneca because Moderna and Pfizer are quite adequate. And now J&J, Johnson & Johnson had been given an approval. It's, it was stopped from being administered because of some clotting issues, but from 23rd of March, again, they have started. So what the Americans know is that they have 1.2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines. That means it is enough to vaccinate the whole population. If you took the whole population, 300 plus million of Americans, it is enough to give them 2 doses twice over. So, this sort of a vaccine nationalism is really not called for, particularly by a country which says it is going to take leadership in the world, it is going to follow the multilateral principles, and it is going to go along with its allies to deal with all such challenges. Teena.
Okay, Professor, I'll take one last question from you. It is said that in these testing times, relationships are tested. Perhaps we are going through one such extraordinary phase at the moment. How do you see diplomacy being guided in the post-COVID era when we sail through these testing times?
I'm happy you asked this. In diplomacy, criticism is not a good strategy. We have to look at joint solutions that can be worked out and be acceptable to all stakeholders. And to me, with the outpouring of this enormous support to India in terms of supplies from all over the world, the biggest challenge that India is going to face now is how to receive, how to manage, how to distribute, how to effectively use that aid that is arriving in India. And that very often creates its own confusion and then sometimes leads to misunderstandings. not only between the supplying agencies and countries vis-a-vis the receiving countries and agencies, but also within the recipient countries, agencies, and various organs of the government. And I think challenge now would be for us to be fully prepared. And I think in that sense, if you allow me to say, I think each individual have a responsibility to not fall victim to this pandemic, take all protocol precautions, and not transmit to others in case one has fallen victim to such a thing. So I think it's a very, very different kind of a challenge that India is facing, as Ambassador Sajjanhar just mentioned, probably first such challenge in 70 years. And therefore, it's also going to have enormous learning lessons as to how to address such challenges in future. Because if you look back 20 years, diseases spread has really become a major issue around the world, from Ebola to SARS to all other MERS and other bird flu, H1N1. So, if you look at 20 years, the frequency of disease spreading because of enormous connectivity around the world is something that has ended up here now in a pandemic, which is really global. So lessons also will be learned from this as to how to reform our structures, how to reorganize our policies. India is the largest population on the planet, most likely, and I think any challenge that is healthcare related will be enormously impacting the whole world if it impacts India. So India impacted is also the whole world impacted in that sense.
That is where the role of the individuals, the role of the society becomes very, very crucial. So with that, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to both my guests for joining me on the program and sharing your perspective with us and our viewers. So as Professor was pointing out, it becomes all the more important for us. We are going through an unprecedented crisis. To my viewers, it's an appeal from Sunset TV. If possible, stay at home. But if you have to step out, make sure you're masked up, ensure proper physical distancing, and keep washing your hands, sanitizing them regularly. Keep yourself safe. Take care of your families. And thank you very much for your time.